mounting conflict over Gaza has led to intense debate and protests right here in the United States. State Department is advising Americans against traveling to Israel and the Palestinian territories as long-range missile attacks continue. Last week, a group of Northeastern University students studying in Israel cut their trip short due to safety concerns. I'm joined now by Lori Lefkowitz. She's a professor of Jewish studies who led that trip, along with two of the students, Jonathan David and Carlos Elias Campos. And it's good to have all three of you here, I should say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so the first question I obviously have to ask you is, did you feel safe?
Well, actually I did. Even though the situation was kind of tense, being in Israel, especially in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, you have the Iron Dome and you have all this safety system that I felt safe.
You did?
Yeah, actually, I called my mom and she said, you better stay there, don't come to Venezuela. I mean, it's safer there than in Venezuela. So.
How about you, Jonathan? Did you feel safe?
Yeah, I felt very safe the whole time with my professor and with the group of students. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of security on the streets, and like Carlos mentioned, the Iron Dome, we felt very safe.
Right, right. When did you get there?
We arrived July 1st.
And at that point, was there anything happening, or was there any presence on the streets?
There was no presence really ever on the street. I mean, you feel people going about their normal lives, but when we arrived, it was immediately following the incidents with the kidnapped boys, the murdered boys on both sides, and that seemed to be the trigger for the hostilities. That said, I think to your first question, everybody goes about life as normal, and one feels safe, though heightened sense of alertness, because you're waiting for the possibility of sirens. And if sirens happen, then there's a protocol to follow. So everybody is alert. I also noticed that once things started happening, instead of saying good evening, people would say to each other, would wish each other a quiet evening. Really? So there's a kind of sense that life is not going on as normal, even though life is going on as normal.
Now, where were you guys during the course of the trip?
Yeah, so the beginning we were in Rahavia in New Jerusalem for 2 weeks, and then we went to Tel Aviv.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was in Tel Aviv that you, Lori, got a call from Northeastern.
Yes.
And they said you had to come home.
They did. They did. A little bit of lead up, but it was at the point at which the airlines stopped flying that I think the university became particularly nervous. While we were in Jerusalem, and then we traveled south into the Negev for a while, they were concerned about us. They wanted daily reports. At the point at which we transferred to Tel Aviv, I was asked to check in every day, to impose a curfew, to think twice about letting the students be on the beach, and within 24 hours, they said, we're coming home.
Right, you're coming home. Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about how you felt as foreigners traveling in the country at that point. Were you treated any differently once this sort of escalated?
Well, at the beginning, actually, when I got to Israel, I'm not American, I'm from Venezuela. I saw that there's a lot of control in the immigration process. But then once you're inside the country, I mean, you feel normal. You feel like you're one of them.
Right. So you didn't feel any added pressure or anything because this was going on?
No,
not at all.
Not at
all.
And what about, you talked about life there in the country and how the residents were responding. What about the media? Were you following the story?
Yeah, in fact, one of the courses that the students were taking, with me they were taking a course on art and literature, contemporary Israeli art and literature, and how it reflects complexities. But the second course, taught by an Israeli colleague, was on politics and communication. So we were very involved in studying how the media covers the conflict. And as it happened, we ended up learning more than we expected in some ways, because we were in it. We visited with Media Line, which is an American nonprofit that distributes stories about current events to both Palestinian, Israeli, and American and Canadian outlets. So that was very interesting. We visited Kol Yisrael, which is the Voice of Israel, their main television station. So we were very conscious of media coverage.
Sure. You guys had planned for this trip for a long time. You're a senior, all finished with school after this course, and you're just going in as a freshman.
Yeah.
But you had to be a little bit disappointed that it had ended up this way, that it was cut short. But at the same time, this must be something you'll just live with forever, right? An experience you'll never forget.
Definitely. It's an experience I don't think any of us will forget. Unfortunately, we had to leave early, but you know, we missed the north of Israel, but I'd love to go back. But yeah, definitely one of the most rewarding experiences I've had.
You had to go to a bomb shelter sometimes because there'd be sirens. Carlos, were you scared then?
Well, actually, in my birthday, my birthday was in a bomb shelter. We were in David Citadel. We was watching the show, and then the siren went off, so we had to move to the shelter. But it was, I mean, it was a memorable experience. At the beginning, of course, it was the first siren, so I was scared. But then we saw that it was a protocol, and if you do everything properly, you're safe.
Were you guys ever planning to travel in Palestinian territory?
The university doesn't allow us to do that. It's part of State Department protocols. And I would have wished to, and I hope in future trips we can expand the rate, and I hope it's peaceful and that we'll have the opportunity to do that. But we do meet with Palestinians. We try to hear as many voices as we can hear and learn as much as we can. It was very disappointing to leave early.
I'm sure.
We loved it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad all three of you got back safely. He's
you.
looking for a grade now. You have to be sure he gets a good grade, all right?
He will have earned it. They all earned some combat pay, I think, because of the drama of the evacuation.
Thanks to all three of you.
Thanks
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you.